1,200 companies, over 30,000 people. We just heard him in the pre-discussion talking about training with Lockheed Martin, so it's one of the Fortune 500 companies. John has an extensive background in sales training, sales process improvement, matching personalities of salespeople to top performance. He also happens to be an expert in China, has been to China. I don't know, how many times you've been to China, John? Over 50 or so?
Only 81.
81. So he is an expert in doing business in China. Greg Towsley is a fellow WSI business owner. He's generated millions of dollars actually using social media. So Greg brings the expertise in actual using the tools. He is the best I've ever seen at using LinkedIn. He just is stellar at that. He, like me, works a lot of internet marketing and really helping companies grow. His focus is more in social media than ours is. So what I'd like to do is the format's going to be, going to let John just give his quick introduction to how excuse me, how he thinks social media has changed the sales process. And then Greg's going to lead us through a little more technical discussion, just a few minutes about what we mean by social media and how it's changed things. And as we go through this, we really want it to be an interactive dialogue. So please enter questions in the question block that you have in your control panel. And Carol Mejia and I will retrieve those and ask them and just interject those into the discussion. So we want it to be very open. As far as contact information, if you've got questions for any of us, we're going to send you contact information and also a recording of this if somebody wants to watch it later to you after the webinar. So looking forward to this. And John, with that, just give us your quick introduction of what you think the topic means and what it means to your life and your sales training.
Well, there's always been 4 classic ways to get a new lead, which all of us are interested in. How do you get new customers? And I mean, there's many ways. And today, you'll see companies using 4 kind of old ways that have always worked, still work, and then 4 new ways. The 4 old ways quickly are go after opportunities where you have a relationship, or from the Miller-Hyman training where you've got an inside coach, or in China where you've got the guanxi, the so-called relationship. Number 2, be an expert at following up, asking for and following up on referrals. And the difference between the way the average salespeople pursue referrals and the top salespeople is totally 100% different. The third old way is branding, but for most small and medium-sized companies, branding becomes too expensive. And then the fourth old way is channel marketing, selling through sales reps, selling through distributors. Every time Dell sells a computer, then 3 or 4 other people get a sale, like Microsoft gets a sale, Intel gets a sale. So those are 4 old ways that used to work and still work. But there's 4 new ways that many companies are focusing on now. The first is outsourcing lead generation to another company. And based on the use of aptitude assessments, you can figure out who's really good at that telemarketing job and not. And so if you staff a telemarketing group with a whole bunch of people who really love that sort of thing, then they can do it a lot better and more productively and less expensively than the normal small company can. So one new way is outsourcing lead generation. It's been around for probably 20 years, but I'd say in the last several years it's gotten pretty brilliant. The second new way, of course, is internet marketing, which is a combination of push and pull. So either pushing out information like email blasts, press releases, and that sort of thing, or you're pulling people in with a combination of search engine optimization and search engine marketing. And if you're doing that well, you're typically getting a great ROI. In fact, the country's biggest consulting firm, McKinsey, just did a study on the value of search. And they did the study in 5 countries, Brazil, India, U.S., France, and Germany. The overall integrated ROI for every company in all 5 of those countries is 7 to 1. That is, the amount of money that you spend on a combination of SEO and SEM is returned to you by a factor of 7 in new business. The third new way, of course, is what we're talking about today, and that is social media. which is a great way to get a new lead and also a great way to nurture and qualify leads. And then the fourth and last new way is called marketing automation, which is a whole new set of software, kind of like CRM or ERP or MRP, except it's different. Marketing automation essentially means, literally, automation means things happen automatically. Marketing refers to the period between acquiring a lead and nurturing and qualifying it. And so to do well with marketing automation, you've got to have an interactive website where people can come and do things, download white papers, watch videos, and that sort of thing. And so the combination of the new ways of acquiring leads, outsourcing lead generation, internet marketing, social media, and then using marketing automation tools to automatically nurture and qualify the lead so that when it is ready to have a discussion or buy, that's when we know to reach out to them. Those four new ways really are defining a revolutionary new sales and marketing process. So that's how I see social media kind of fitting into the new ways of getting business. One of the 8 principal ways today is to do it.
Okay, great, John. Well, thank you so much for that, and we're going to come back to a lot of those points you made, so I appreciate it. Greg, I know you've got your mind map ready, and Greg, if you've never heard Greg present before, he has a unique style of using a mind map and explaining the problem. I find it very powerful and different than I use. I'm an old PowerPoint guy. So, Greg, tell us your version of how social media is changing things and what it means to us.
Awesome. Well, first off, John, that was very insightful, and thank you for that overview. I'm really excited to jump into this dialogue today and kind of explore old versus new ways. And Hugh, thanks for the opportunity to be here. And as folks can see my screen here, I am going to go into this is called a mind map, and this will be provided to everybody after today's call. But really, the subject is the sales process has changed. And I'll even go on to say that the traditional sales process is broken. Let's take a quick look at the traditional sales process, and we're only going back maybe 5 or 6 years. So roughly 6 years ago, a quick overview of the traditional sales process was to generate a large list or a database of suspects and prospects. Then the sales individual or the sales department was responsible for calling and emailing and sending letters and snail mail and reaching out to that database or that list. The overall goal is obviously meet with decision makers, ask very pointed questions, and find pain and qualify for budget, and then at the end of that is present a proposal. So that's what I call the traditional sales process. It still works today, and I would say the majority of companies are still following that with traditional salespeople. But I'll go on to say that that process in today's world is broken, and there's a better way or a more efficient way. The other piece that I'll, before I bounce this back to John to get his impression on, the problem that we're discussing today, is the reason why that doesn't work anymore is because of information and communication. Our world is essentially becoming more and more digitized, and all the facts and marketing Sherpa will reiterate this. In today's world, we receive more marketing messages than ever before in the history of time. Companies' budgets are tighter than ever selling in this type of environment, and businesses essentially have a common goal of they just want to get more from less. They want to get more from their marketing budgets without spending more. They want to get more from their employees without hiring more. So that's a common trend. And most importantly, we have, compared to 6 years ago, we have so much more access to information. 6 years ago, very few of us were walking around with a search engine in our pocket. And search and the social aspects of communication online has changed drastically in 6 years. so much so it compelled me to be in the business of changing this broken sales process. John or Hugh, any comments on that?
The only comment I would give is I totally agree with it, but I would say it's more of a, it's not binary. In other words, we're undergoing a transition, whereas for many industries, the old process is still working to some degree, but it's being rapidly overtaken by your discussion.
Yeah, and I agree with John that it's a process in transition. And to me, one of the biggest things I think that impacts all of this is that more buying research is going on before you ever know it's going on. And so people are talking on social media about your products. People are looking at your website before you ever know they've been there. And so there's a tremendous amount of activity going on before you even recognize it. Whereas I think in the old days, the salesman was more involved up front. The catalog was delivered. The question was called and asked. And but that's the piece that I see that's changing a tremendous amount. Greg, your thoughts?
Yeah, Hugh, I would totally attest to that, and I'd like to get into some of that, and I'm sure that that's going to spark some pointed questions. Nowadays, you know, people have so much more access to information, and when companies are in buying mode, essentially they have a problem that they need to solve. So generally people will turn to search. You'll go to Google and look and evaluate potential solutions, then maybe ask some questions. Before you even come in contact with a salesperson, you are pretty knowledgeable around the three different buckets that problem falls within. And, you know, if you look at doctors nowadays, I think that they struggle with this because most people come with printed off materials that they found online that is due to their illness, and it's challenging for doctors nowadays to work around, you know, people self-diagnosing themselves, just to give you a quick example or a quick mindset.
That's a great example because we all do that now. Yeah, so that's a great example. And if we're doing it to doctors, then you know business to business, consumer to business, people are looking ahead of time.
So I think we've done a good job of stating what the problem is, and I'd like to, you know, maybe see if there are any questions now, or go into John, if you want to take the lead around, you know, what's the solution, what's the strategy, and I think you've done a good job highlighting the 4 new ways of dealing with your business sales process.
Be happy to. Are there any questions first, Hugh?
You know, nobody's asked a question, so I'd encourage everyone to type in your tough questions. I've got a whole list prepared, so we'll keep this moving along. But you know, please ask those. I think it's real important. Yeah.
Well, let me just respond to Greg's question. Typically, when I see a company doing business-to-business sales or business to government, and they've got a good social media campaign going on, fundamentally and required is first an interactive website. It's got to be a website people can come to, interact with it by downloading white papers, getting information that's of value to them, watching appropriate videos, maybe using an ROI calculator and that sort of thing. So the website has things that are helpful to the prospect, either to learn about your products and services or to help them understand their issues better. And so fundamentally to a good social media campaign is an interactive website. Secondly, you'll see companies having a LinkedIn business site, a Facebook business site, YouTube, etc., Twitter account. So, and all of those are connected together in the company's website. And then maybe most importantly, the company's got a active blog where there's good blog entries being made that are of value to and interest to customers, values being put into the blog, the company's also reaching out into the blogosphere, so to speak. So it's active. So that's what I'm typically seeing when a company is taking advantage of the social media kind of revolution. If you're a individual salesperson and you're totally taking advantage of it, then you're pretty much what's called a LinkedIn freak. And I'm sure Greg will get more into this, but there's about 10 ways that I see most of the elite salespeople I'm training that are using LinkedIn. And also, you know, it used to be LinkedIn was business and Facebook was personal, but I used to have an awful lot of business going on between people on Facebook as well. So for individual salespeople, it's typically a combination of Facebook and LinkedIn. And of course, they'll use the other ones. For example, if I'm about to go out and meet a new prospect and I know they've got a Twitter account, I'll go spend 10 minutes looking at their Twitter feed, and you know, I know everything I need to know about them now. I got everything. That's what I'm seeing and how it's being used by companies and individual salespeople.
John, I think that's great insights, and I always say knowledge is power. And what you do, it's not only having that knowledge, it's what you do with that knowledge. Bringing it back to the mind map, I'll just reiterate on a couple things that John said. And by the way, I am a LinkedIn freak. LinkedIn is my favorite tool, and it inspired me 4 years ago to start my WSI business. I'm a walking case study for LinkedIn. In a previous life, about 7 or 8 years ago, I built a $2 million sales territory only using LinkedIn, and so we can get into that case study. But basically, I was selling software to Fortune 500 companies. I'd wake up every single day, find potential buyers on LinkedIn, call them, email them, stalk them, and I did that for 1 year, about 30 to 40 times a day. And then the following year ended up generating $2 million in sales. So it works, and it's just the knowledge and utilizing these tools efficiently. But I want to touch a little bit around what we call win-win selling, which goes back to the sales process is broken. I want to mention one thing. The fundamentals have not changed at all. There's still going to be marketing and marketing communications. Lead generation is still a crucial aspect, and salespeople and business development professionals are still keys to businesses being successful in generating revenue. So really the fundamentals haven't changed, but the platforms have. And as John mentioned, you know, LinkedIn and Twitter and even Facebook, these are tremendous sources to gather information, which brings me into, and we're probably going to get into some questions and some examples on how these tools can be used efficiently by companies and by the individual sales professional. But talking about the sales process broken as I compared it to the traditional, I just highlighted 4 simple examples of how this new, what we call agile or win-win selling sales process looks like. And it's more about relationships, and it's more about knowledge, communication, and information. And what we suggest and what we've seen as successful in this with these new social media platforms is identify maybe 20 or 30 good prospects which you know the products that you sell can create a win-win situation for their business. When I say win-win, basically you have a strategy to do one of 2 things: increase their sales revenue or save them money. Most CEOs are interested in the top line and the bottom line. And with your product and services, it really doesn't matter what you're selling. If you can provide them a win-win situation where you make money selling your product and then they reap the benefits of it, that's what we would call a win-win. And identify a small list of prospects and get to know them, build relationships with them online, offline. And John alluded to some of the ways you can build relationships is see what they're tweeting about on Twitter, see what types of videos videos and marketing campaigns they have on YouTube. Go into LinkedIn and look where most of the employees come from. We can get into LinkedIn Company Insights, which is extremely powerful. And then with all of that information and studying your potential prospects, understand, you'll have a good understanding of what their challenges are from a day-to-day operation standpoint, and then also from a macro level, and then you can sit down with them and feel comfortable about having a good quality conversation, articulating the benefit to them, the benefit to you, and essentially a win-win situation.
So Greg, what you're saying is, I mean, I heard you say it several times in there about building a relationship and communicating. Wes had asked a question online, said the use of internet and automated processes seems to reduce how much the need is for individuals the client can relate to, and don't you still buy from people and not from companies or from websites, clearly, or Facebook pages? And the answer to that is clearly yes, and I think that's what you're saying, right? You use it using social media to facilitate that relationship, so you learn more about them up front, and maybe they know more about you before they talk to you.
Exactly, and I always throw out what I call the vanity search. And if you're meeting with anybody, chances are you're probably going to Google their name to see what they've been up to. And we all know that if I was to poll 90% of the people on this call and we did a vanity search searching their name in Google, their LinkedIn profile will most likely come up number one. So you'd be remiss if you didn't Google somebody's name who you have a meeting with, and then you better be sure to understand what they're seeing when they Google you, because chances are that is going to take place, and that goes into that information, communication, and business intelligence.
John, let me ask you a question that came up online, and then we'll come back to Greg's points in just a second. Brandon asked, can you speak to the difference between business to business and business to government with filters and firewalls? And the government doesn't really want people talking across their website sites and social media and that sort of thing. So can you talk to that just a little bit?
Sure. It does. It is true that social media tools are more applicable to commercial companies than government, but there's some new studies out that are showing that I think it's 57% of the government customers now are using one or more social media tools. So they're rapidly increasing their use, way behind the commercial customers, but gaining fast.
Are you starting to hear examples of people in companies like Lockheed Martin who are engaging on social media and therefore finding out about requests for proposals and projects earlier ahead of the competition, or is that just a pipe dream at this point?
No, it's true, and we train on 10 kind of universal skills for salespeople. One of them is called, from the Miller-Hyman training, always have an inside relationship or an inside coach, or if you're in China, have the guanxi with the person you're trying to get business from. That particular skill is more important when you're selling to the government than what is when you're selling to commercial companies. Because if you don't have the inside relationship when you're trying to sell to the government, it's almost impossible, especially as a new company, to get the work. And secondly, the government does have lots of firewalls and that sort of thing, for their employees. But now with, all employees having a mobile phone, that's personal. Well, that the government firewall doesn't work anymore.
No firewall, right? Exactly. All right. Greg, why don't you go back? We've got a couple other questions, but keep rolling what your points you were making. I think it's good if we mix a little of this up, so press on.
All right. So let's discuss a little bit more, and we'll segue a little bit into sales strategies, which in turn maybe would open up some additional questions. John mentioned some of the platforms and some of the new ways, and one of the things he mentioned is an inside coach. And as it pertains to lead generation and building those relationships, one source that we've talked about is LinkedIn. And another statistic related to LinkedIn, and probably is pertinent to government-type work, is 100% of executives within the Fortune 500 within Fortune 500 companies have profiles on LinkedIn. So that just goes to show with that statistic, and that there is a very, very strong business community. Related to lead generation, I'll reiterate one point that was mentioned before, is when you're in selling mode as a company or even an individual, you're in the pain business. You're solving a problem. And with the access to information that we have today, which we didn't necessarily have as great of information 6 years ago, and this is a trend that we're going to continue, is prospects are, one, going to educate themselves before contacting a company, before contacting a salesperson. So I always like to say you need to fish where the fish are, and you also have to have good bait if you're going to get a boatload of fish. And where the fish are is these prospects are asking questions online after they do their Google searches. They're viewing online presentations related to their problem. So as a good fisherman, you need to be dropping your bait where they're asking questions, and that's where you should be doing some of your lead generation. And I think, John, you alluded to that with some of the things you mentioned around the social media platforms and also internet marketing and building collateral for your business. Any other thoughts on lead generation?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well.
All right.
Yeah, John, with, I know you do a lot of work just in sales process improvement consulting, and in that work, what kind of recommendations are you making? If you take an average medium-sized B2B company like a manufacturing company, what would be the ideal social media campaign for them? I mean, what would you just bake just off the top of your head? What's best practices at this point?
Pretty much what I said. That is, fundamentally, you've got to have an interactive website, because if you can do all the rest of the stuff, but if people come to your website and just see brochureware, they're just not going to stay very long. So fundamentally, you've got to have an interactive website where people can really come and do stuff. And then, second, you really have to be connected with all the various social media tools that we've already mentioned: Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter. And then once you've got that and you've got an active blog, maybe fundamentally the blog is the most important. So you're adding value content to the blog by more than just one person in the company. Your people are reaching out in the blogosphere, and as most of you probably know, that'll increase your standings with respect to SEO. And that's pretty much what I see as best practice right now. You want to add to that, Greg?
John, I would just say you're right on. Mentioning a company blog is crucial, and that is considered a social media platform. It's really the voice of the company. For instance, if I was a CFO and needed to look at a more efficient financial system or an ERP system to replace an older system, I'm going to, before I do anything, before I contact any companies, I'm going to do a Google search. I might ask some of my colleagues questions around what they're currently using as a financial system. And then I'm going, as I evaluate those companies, I'm going to look at what type of information and what type of communication they're sharing online. And if that is very stagnant, and if that hasn't been updated in a while, and I'm looking at two ERP companies, comparing the two, one has an active blog with video and just providing great content specific to my problem, it's a no-brainer. I'm 100 times more apt to contact them versus the company who does, has a blog that hasn't been updated in 6 months. I'm questioning, are they still in business? So I would just reiterate the fact that social media and producing content as it pertains to lead generation is just a crucial aspect. And nowadays, it's pretty easy.
Greg, let me add a couple things. And Brandon, who asked a question also about business to government, says that his blog pulls in 1 to 5 visitors to the website. I assume that's probably per day, and they have 200 hits per month for blog entries that are more than a year old. And I can say for our business, we have a blog. It's a separate name, Avalanche Internet Marketing, and that blog generates about 15 to 20% of our business year in and year out. Comes through that blog. People read some topic, some obscure thing that we blogged about, liked what they saw, come over to our main website and contact us. So we know it works. Now I've got a couple of questions that's maybe not so sure it works. I got Sarah, who works in a manufacturing company, says, what if you don't have a social type business? And you got Scott, who works in charter aviation, saying, we've taken the approach of building a website first, and then we just kind of drag along Twitter and LinkedIn and these things. You're not having a lot of relevance to these things. John, do you find companies in all of your consulting that this just is not worth the effort?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not worth the effort. What you find is companies don't take it seriously and don't do all the things that Greg just mentioned and you mentioned about the blog. And one of the issues, of course, is it's the age-old problem of who's going to write the company's newsletter and who's going to give articles and who's going to make all the blog entries. And so, everybody in the company is busy, so who's going to do it? So that's one of the impediments that I see for most companies. And one way to get around that is there are something like 40 million people in our country that are unemployed, and many of them working part-time, and many of them easy to contact through Craigslist and that sort of stuff. So you can almost always find somebody with a journalism major who's out of work who also is knowledgeable of your industry. And you can hire them for $8 an hour to start making blog entries for you. And so back to what Greg said and what you said, you got to have an active blog. And if there's just nobody in the company to do it, then hire a part-timer. Pretty simple, easy, quick, efficient.
Okay, great.
I would agree, and I'll just couple that with a short little case study of an existing client that we have. They're a software company, and they sell math education software predominantly to principals and superintendents of schools. This is math software to teach kids math software K through 8. And the problem was, or the mindset was, that their superintendents of schools are not on LinkedIn and they're not on Facebook, and it's not really any place for them to be on any of these social media platforms. And we went back to look from a search marketing standpoint and from a communication standpoint, it would be a good resource. So we dig down a little bit deeper, and to couple with what John says, you always need an insider or an insider coach. We said, okay, well let's go down to the users of this software to see if we can build a team of influencers. And at the end of the day, the teachers are the ones who are actively using this software to teach kids algebra and all different kinds of math. So we know that the teachers are keeping track of their kids on Facebook, so we slowly launched a social media campaign predominantly on Facebook and LinkedIn to reach out to the influencers of the product. And social media has a lot of different uses in terms of press releases and giving people a platform to share with you feedback or connecting with your suppliers and partners. So with a creative campaign, it can really take on a life of its own, as it has done for this company called Mind Research, which sells software to superintendents of schools and principals.
Okay, great.
Let me just add another generic example, and that is, in some industries, you'll see the older buyers who are not on LinkedIn, not doing Facebook and that sort of thing. But many of the people that work for them are there. And that senior buyer isn't going to go look on Google themselves anyway. They're going to tell their people to go find out who to do business with. And so those are the people who go out and find out the information for the senior buyer. and are just like the teachers are the influencers. So it's those people you got to reach out to.
Okay, I got a question I'd like to answer real quick, and then we'll come back to a couple of things. Kathleen asked a question, asked the first question, so I got to ask it. What about mobile marketing? You know, there's a couple of pieces to that. You know, but mobile is now where the location part of where people are doing all this, and it turns out that about 20% of what people do on mobile devices is actually social media. The other big pieces of what people do on mobile are finding out information about your company and finding out destination kind of information. I want a restaurant, I want a hair salon, I want to, you know, I know what I want, but I want to know what's local, and then I want reviews. So those are the big three things people are doing out there. You know, in terms of being mobile yourself, we're seeing a ton of interest in that in our clients and trying to catch up with clients with better mobile websites. Because people are looking for that company information. It's also an opportunity if you're a local company to take advantage of that destination. So in terms of mobile marketing, just be easy to be found. And the other thing that affects this conversation a lot in terms of mobile is if 20% of the time people are doing social media on their mobile device, then you know, that just tells you how much more opportunity there is for people to do this while they're riding back and forth to work, or all sorts of other locations that they can do this, whereas they couldn't before. So that's also changing the amount of information search that goes on in social media, you know, beyond just chatting about the thing. So mobile is a huge empowerment to this whole area of social. I think I said that right. Mobile is really empowering social because we don't have to be sitting at our PC to do it anymore.
And Hugh, I don't know how many.
I was going to add one more little tidbit, and that is, you know, the new HTC phone has a separate Facebook button.
Is that right?
Yeah.
God.
And Hugh, I don't know how many businesses really grasp the impact of mobile, but as a business development or as a business owner, how many times have you arrived to an appointment early and sat in the car and pulled out your phone and Googled the company name that you're meeting with, or did some additional preparing, or Googled the person's name that you're meeting with, or even sitting in the lobby waiting for that person to come out? And that's all mobile right there. Or never mind being in a meeting and you know you're sitting down with your executive team and there's a problem and you need a solution. Chances are people will pull out their iPad, which is mobile, or their phone and just start contacting companies or doing some research right there. So the impact and the trend line, if you look at the use of mobile, which companies can look at that within their Google Analytics, it's mind-boggling.
John, I have a question for you. I know you're along with me. We're looking a lot at marketing automation. How do you think that helps this process of if people are looking for more information early on and they know so much more than they used to know? How does marketing automation help with some of that? Help the sales process here?
Again, marketing automation software is a whole new class of software like CRM or ERP or MRP. And it consists of decision trees, artificial intelligence, and lead scoring schemes that add points to a lead that would tell you when a random lead turns into a suspect, turns into a prospect, turns into a qualified lead. And so an example would be if anybody in the audience here wanted a sales aptitude assessment to assess how much natural talent people have for sales, and they put sales aptitude assessments into Google, then we're going to come up, CPQ, our assessment's going to come up really high. And if they clicked on it, they're not going to go to our website. They're going to go to a microsite or a landing page. In other words, they're going to go right immediately to what they want. And when they get there, there's all kinds of things they can do. There's white papers, videos, and that sort of stuff. And there's a 2-minute video of me talking about it, or Kyler talking about it. And so if the first prospect came in and watched the video once, the second prospect watched the video twice, and the third prospect quit watching the video halfway through, that gives us some useful intelligence. That tells us, in the grossest sense, the first one was a cool lead, the second one's a warm lead, and the third one's a cold lead. And then depending on how long they stay on the site, what white papers they download, and that sort of thing, as soon as they leave the site, the software automatically sends them an email thanking them for visiting, and in addition, sending them another video or another white paper. And it isn't just any old white paper or any old video, or the standard one to everybody. It is tuned based on what they've already done on the site. And then the next day they get another email with another video or whatever. And then at some point, if they score high enough, they show enough interest and respond enough. And by the way, if they want more content, they got to give us their name, email address, and title. Now that we have their title too, now we know who they are and what their behavior is. At some point, they'll get an automatic email that invites them to a webinar by one of our CPQ counselors to show them how it works. If they come back and hit contact me, then Kyla calls them within 5 minutes. So what's really happened is when companies implement this, they actually need less salespeople, because you're not doing a lot of cold calling anymore. You're not doing so much cold emailing anymore, and you're not reaching out to prospects when they're not ready to even talk, and so you're not pestering people. You're only really reaching out with an inside or outside salesperson as appropriate when the customer is either ready to buy or at least have a serious conversation about their needs and how your solution fits. So when you look at some of the studies done by the big consulting firms, Aberdeen Group, McKinsey, etc., the ROI, or return on investment, from using these tools is I don't use this word too much, but it's astonishing or breathtaking. It's just, you've seen them reviewed, right?
Yeah, I've seen them. I know what you're talking about, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
So now the salespeople have time to do all this social media, right?
Exactly.
Hey, John, I would love to be that salesperson making that sales call after somebody went through that process.
Hey, John, let me ask you a question. I got one here I want to ask. Bethany asks, how do you show traditional salespeople, I'd call them, how do you show all these old farts that the process is broken and, you know, that they still think it's working fine, and, you know, she's in a more traditional industry. It's hard to explain all this. I know we've been trying to explain it all hour. Can you sum it up? How do you get through to some of these people?
Well, I mean, for me, if I was a sales manager now in a company, I would either get them LinkedIn training. So I'm sure you do that, don't you, Greg, that sort of thing?
Yes, and I'm very passionate about it because it works.
Yeah, so if you get some of the guys that are been around for a long time and don't think they can learn any new tricks, I mean, they've all obviously heard it's a revolution. They just don't know what to do about it. And so it just gets down to a simple training deal. Either send them to sales training like I do, where you train them in the bigger picture on how to do it, or you get down to the grass with a guy like Greg who spends an hour with them, so that in the end of it they really get how to use LinkedIn and start using it. But just telling them to go use it usually doesn't work.
And John, I'll even go on to get a little bit more granular with that. You called me a LinkedIn freak, and I'm a LinkedIn freak because I just think that knowledge is power. And I'll give you a quick example, which for folks who can see my screen on the call here, say for instance, going back to our new and improved win-win selling process, I've identified a company that I know I can create a win-win relationship with. They need me and I need them. You can simply go to LinkedIn, and one of my favorite features is to do a company search. And let's just say that it is a bank that I'm looking to do business with. There's a button on LinkedIn, which is called Insightful Statistics About whatever company you search, and I'd be very surprised if the company was not there. And so again, it's under LinkedIn, companies, and insightful statistics. And if you print this off and you get a meeting with this particular company, you can just put this in front of you as statistical data that you've done, research on, which, just from my screenshot here, I can see that there are 31 LinkedIn users at this company, and it breaks it down by number of years of experience, educational degree, universities attended, what the growth is for this company based upon, this is all data that's being pulled in from just LinkedIn profiles, the past companies that these people have worked at. If anybody has currently left the company, it shows the people that have left, and then it also shows all of the profiles of the people actually at that company and what their job function is. So if I needed to prospect this company and get an appointment, I can either do top-down selling, which is going after the CEO, CFO, CIO, or start business intelligence process in getting meetings with line managers, or even calling past employees who have currently departed from this. Then if anybody, if you get that meeting, you could simply just print this off, and this is information that they probably have not even taken a look at, or they're probably going to, if you have it in front of you, they're probably going to ask, where did you get this information on our company? And then you can go into solving some of their pains and some of their challenges.
Great, thanks. That was a great insight. I love that, yeah.
It's a great insight, Greg, and also for the other listeners, that's like one of 15 ways to use LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a question of top 10 ways to use LinkedIn and Facebook from Art, and we're a little bit running out of time, so maybe we'll catch that right at the very end and come back to that. Christina asked, and let me ask John this, and I may help answer too. To launch a new product, what do you recommend around social media? Does they have a Facebook page? They're in LinkedIn, but how do you start Twitter and get followers? What do you think, John? What are the top, of course, it may depend somewhat on the product, but what do you think for new product introduction? How can social media help that?
Well, as far as, it's kind of the new communications tools to get a buzz going about your new product. And so you know a lot more about the details of this than I do, Hugh, but I mean that's a classic way that companies now are doing when any product launch, whether it's a big company like Ford's brilliant at it right now, yep, or smaller companies.
Yeah, I'd say, Christina, the key is to give people something of value. Ask for their opinions. People love to interact, like the number of questions we've got. So, if you can do that, then that can help you get fans on Facebook and followers on Twitter. And the biggest thing is start doing it. Be consistent. Put out information that people find interesting. Giveaways are great for Facebook. I mean, there's a whole scheme on Facebook of how to gain followers by running little cheap ads, and it depends on what your product is. That might work for you. Giveaways are great to add fans in Facebook, and LinkedIn not so much for that, but Facebook and Twitter are more applicable for that. Greg, help me with a couple of more ideas. What would you use in LinkedIn in your area of real expertise? What top 2 or 3 things you'd do if you were launching a new product in LinkedIn?
So I'll back up a little bit before I get to LinkedIn, but this is just one of my all-time favorite case studies, and it's from a company called Grasshopper.com, which has a voicemail system, and we can include this as a case study, and they launched a new product, and what they did, which was a social media play, is they had a budget of $50,000, so they took a good piece of that budget, and they created a impactful YouTube video. And now I understand not all products have a budget this size, but this is a medium-sized company, and it was a new phone system that they were launching. So they created a impactful video, and then they used LinkedIn, and they used social media to find 20 influential people. When we say influential people, related to our business, we like to call them raving fans, which are just people who will support your product and get out there and tell people, which then inspires word of mouth and referral-based marketing, which essentially is the best and most cost-effective. So they took a chocolate-covered grasshopper, and they put it into a FedEx envelope, and mailed it to the top 20 most influential bloggers around entrepreneurship, because this is the entrepreneur's phone system. It's just grasshopper.com. And then they sent them the chocolate-covered grasshopper with a URL to the YouTube video, and that was it. And this took on a viral campaign, which had a ridiculous amount of return on investment and led to new sales. And if you want, we can take this case study, which is publicized all over the internet. All you have to do is Google grasshopper case study, but we'll include that. And that's just an example of how social media can be used to create a viral campaign or a campaign on a launch of a new product. It's one of my favorites.
That's a good one. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I want to close this off and get everybody back to work here. Let me ask just a couple of other questions. Rob asked regarding LinkedIn, he's going to market with it, and would you suggest linking to or not linking to competitors if they ask you to link, or maybe even he's asking, should you have an active campaign to link to competitors? I know that's a tough question. What do you think, Greg?
It really goes into what is your LinkedIn strategy. Are you going to connect with everybody and just try to build a huge network, or are you going to be very, very selective in who you connect with and who you invite into your network? Real quick, previously, my strategy with LinkedIn was to only connect with directors of ITs and software quality assurance managers only. Don't let anybody else within my network, and that way I built a very, very tight-knit group who I can communicate with and share with. Now my school of thought is I sell a broader product, so then I want to connect with everybody. So I would suggest, coming up with what is your best strategy, and then view who is asking you to connect and who you want to connect with, because your network is only as good as the quality of that network and the people within it.
John, what do you think? Do you have people that you just routinely don't? I'm sure I know you have over 500 followers. I don't know, it's probably over 5,000. Do you screen people out?
Well, the trouble with letting your competitors in is if you're not careful, you give them access to your customers, which is what they want. That's the reason they want to link in with you.
Right.
So I don't let competitors link in with me.
Yeah, so two different answers there, I think. Right. Okay. I took John Edwards off mute. John Edwards is a partner in the Pursuit Group, and he's our true expert in marketing automation, although John sure speaks a good game. Let's see. John had something he wanted to say, so have at it, John.
Yeah, I was just commenting in the background to Hugh that there's kind of an old way of marketing and a new way. The old way was what I would call interruptive marketing, and that worked in a day when you could control the message, when you could control the channel, and when it was one-directional, meaning it was from you out to somebody else. Whether it was through a trade magazine or at a trade show or in person, it's kind of a one-way flow. What's changed and why we are now talking about interactive marketing is because we really don't control the message so much anymore. We don't control the channels anymore. And social media and sites like Twitter and Facebook and the like, blogs, have turned messaging into conversations, and conversations by their nature are two-way. So if you choose not to be a part of the conversation, you really are ceding control of the message to somebody else. And so you really want to be a part of the conversation. So for those people who sort of question social media, I don't know that you have much of a choice, because otherwise, your competitors, the ones who are more aggressive, I think will step in and the conversations will be with them and not with you. So that was my my short comment to Hugh in background there.
Okay, great. Appreciate that, John. Closing comments, Greg?
No, I think that was well said, and that's kind of the purpose of this call today, is that the old sales process is broken. Now there's a better way, and just to sum that up, I like to say the walls have all been taken down. Marketing messages used to be built in boardrooms and pushed out to target market. Now the target market controls the conversation and controls what is said, and you have to see what you can do to control that message, which is obviously being involved in social media from a brand reputation standpoint and also communication, and then lead generation.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for being with us today, Greg. John, your closing comments?
Can't say any better than John and Greg just said it. Totally agree.
Okay, well, I hope we've answered some of the questions that we asked in terms of what you can do to fix this broken process. And like I said, we'll follow up with an email with contact information for John and Greg and I. And if you have questions, feel free to ask any of the three of us, and we'll be glad to help. So thank you very much, and have a great weekend.